claim host. It says
No, I got it's going now. It's just I don't. You know what? Gremlins. Just gremlins.
all right.
Okay, we're streaming.
It's probably not seeing you as the host.
No, I'm on.
It says in meeting controls, click participants, click claim host, click login to claim host, log into your Zoom account. You will now be listed as the host in the participants list. Maybe that's what it is.
We're on. It's on Facebook now.
Okay.
Got lots of sharing to do. Todd is waiting patiently. I'm so grateful because this doesn't exactly look. This looks even less professional than it usually does. Here comes the sharing part. We're a couple minutes late, folks. The gremlins have gotten to us. We have some new groups joining us this week. I was welcomed into some new groups, including For Our Future PA, Flip PA. We're thrilled to have them. Just doing our sharing here, folks. You know how the Facebook part goes. It's always awesome. For Our Future Western PA, thrilled to have them with us as well. Of course, I say that before I hit share, so that probably wasn't the best thing in the world, was it? We will be with you very shortly. I don't think we'll be joining Restore Northampton County this week. I was kicked out of Restore Lehigh County. That will perhaps be a story for later in the program. Can't join Back to Blue Philadelphia. They don't welcome us any longer. Perhaps that's a discussion for another day as well. And I think there, let's say hello to Hot 101 momentarily. And we are live on Hot 101. And wow, so 5:04 Eastern Time, coming to you live from the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, part of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in these United States, on planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. Back from a week off for Labor Day. This is the Kennedy Effect for 13 September 2020 as we draw ever closer to perhaps the most monumental election day, certainly since perhaps the Great Depression or since the Civil War. The Kennedy Effect returns live after a few moments of gremlin mania here in our humble little studio from my second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I do appreciate it. You know, I break the fourth wall with you all the time. This is not one of the three major networks, not one of the three big cable networks. We're just fighting our way through here, much closer to Free Speech TV than anything else. So we're just fighting our way through it. So welcome back. Welcome home. Thank you to everybody who is back with us after a week's break. We hope you had a wonderful Labor Day. And even more so, we hope you remember what Labor Day is about. We thank you for being here. We are humbled. You are welcome here. And thank you. And thank you. And thank you. And you know, I thank you a lot. So I appreciate it. This program is not only near and dear to my heart, it is, in fact, near and dear to my heart. We do it because we love it. We do it because we think it's important. We do it because we think it provides something out into the ether that is missing. And it is important to us that you are here. And we're just grateful that you're here. We hope you take something away from it each week. And so thank you all for being here. So I am done gushing over you for now, since we are a little bit late. We obviously, we start the program early each week. Sometimes you get to see that fun bit. You get to see me bouncing back and forth between technologies. You get to see me sharing the program out on Facebook, which is always riveting television, as I punch buttons and complain about things that don't work properly. Well, this week you get to see a little more complaining because we had some gremlins. A very interesting little phenomenon. I do not exactly know how you can be in a Zoom meeting and yet still somehow not be signed into it. So we'll have to shake that out a little later as the program proceeds. But here we are, back with you live on yet another Sunday, the 13th, this time the 13th of September, 2020. So for everyone who is out there, thank you. Let's get into the little bit of business that we usually start every program with. Wherever you are watching, on Facebook, on the anywhere, passing 40 groups, pages, timelines, insert proper term here, where you watch. Thank you very, very much. We even have some new groups that have joined us in the last several programs. There is Flip PA. There is Our Future PA, Our Future Western PA, and then Our Future Central PA. I hope I got all of that correct. And if I didn't, feel free to admonish me vigorously, and I will correct it. But wherever you are watching, we appreciate it very, very, very much. Whether you are watching us live or whether you watch on a recording later in the week, we appreciate that as well. Just the fact that you are part of the program is deeply, deeply appreciated. However, because there's always a however, right? It is our home group page. That other side of information, that's where we will see your names. That's where we will welcome you and see your comments and questions for me and for my honored guest, who I will introduce shortly. That's where we will see you. You can watch, listen wherever you choose, wherever we have shared the program. You're welcome there. We appreciate it, but it is the home group page, that other side of information, where I will see your names, say hello to you. We can exchange comments, questions, and so on. That's where we will see you. For our friends and our family at hot101.net, including the hot101.net Facebook page, by the way, where you can see the program, thank you for welcoming us back onto your devices, your speakers, your smart speakers, your devices through Bluetooth onto your car radios, however you take in hot101.net. Thank you for welcoming us back into your families and to your devices. If you do not know how to listen to hot101.net, where have you been? Have you not been listening to me these several weeks? Well, let me walk you through it. It's very, very simple. You can go to the main website page at hot101.net. You can also access hot101.net through their apps. There is an app for hot101.net at the Apple App Store. You can go to the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or you can go to the TuneIn Radio app and just search for hot101.net. Isn't that simple? And of course, little new information over my left shoulder, although if you're watching, actually I think it is still the left shoulder if you're watching these backward camera things, tech stuff. I told you there was a gremlin day. You'll see an announcement over my shoulder. If you have a business, a product, a service, anything that you want to get out to the world. No, Siri, I don't need you right now. Thank you for being there. If you want to have a business, a product, a service that you want to announce literally to the world, you can advertise that here on the Kennedy Effect. All you need to do is just drop us an email and let's discuss it. And these dulcet tones can read them and share them with the entire planet. Just email us that other Kennedy, all one word, that other Kennedy @gmail.com. 5:11 Eastern time on the eastern seaboard of the United States. And I believe he has been beyond patient because he got to listen to me freak the heck out about the gremlins that were happening and probably thinking to himself in his exceptionally intelligent mind, what have I gotten myself into? But yet he is still here and being exceptionally patient with me as we sorted through all of this, as myself and George sorted through all this, and he's been exceptionally patient, and I appreciate it beyond words. And he will get to hear me say thank you to him now, and at least probably at least 100 more times. My guest for this week is the Democratic nominee and candidate for the Pennsylvania State House, and not just the candidate and the nominee, but to return to the Pennsylvania State House, which we will get into as well. And that's Todd Eachus. Todd, welcome to the program.
Jeff, it's great to be here, man. Regardless of the gremlins, I've been in a lot worse situations than this one, brother. So this is easy, and looking forward to the conversation, man.
Well, we had a chance to speak, obviously, a couple weeks ago, as I do, as the audience will know, especially regulars to the program will know. We talk to the guests and do a little bit of show prep. I don't actually do a ton of show prep. I do less than other hosts will do because I like the conversation to be organic and spontaneous. But we did talk a couple of weeks ago to get ready, and it was a lengthy conversation, an exceptionally enjoyable conversation, and an energetic conversation. So I appreciate, I told you that I needed you here early in case there were gremlins, and gosh darn it, I set myself up for failure because they cropped up out of nowhere. They came up out of the cracks in the sidewalk, and darn it, here they came. So I appreciate very much your patience and for you being here, and just thank you for being here. I appreciate it very much. I know that being out on the, even though campaigning has to happen now in a properly, almost exclusively digital world, although I know you're canvassing, but I mean, even though campaigning has to happen in almost an exclusively digital format, for you to take the time out, even on a Sunday evening, I appreciate that you took the time and felt it important enough to be here. So thank you, sir.
It was also the kickoff of like Super Bowl Sunday, so I wasn't going to knock on people's doors and interrupt the Eagles game. That would have been so, it's great to have a little live activity going on and have a little football back. It feels like fall again, right? It wouldn't be campaign season without a little bit of football. So, it's great to be back, and I'm excited. I'm really excited about being here, Jeff. Your show provides a special platform. It not only reaches people who are really interested in Pennsylvania politics, but you also reach a set of people across the globe that maybe Pennsylvanians living abroad. Maybe there's veterans watching today from military bases across the country. But, it's just a great opportunity to talk straight about, at least my perspective of where Pennsylvania is, and give you a little bit of a primer about what's happening here in southern Luzerne County, because I'm actually located in the Cunningham Valley in Luzerne County, right near Hazleton, Pennsylvania.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, and I will get to my normal and I warned you what the first question would be, but we've seen some reporting this week in several sources, something that I've been talking about and that's gone back into other reporting, sadly only from abroad. You're familiar with the main Facebook page. You're a member of the main Facebook page, which I thank you for as well. That other side of information, most of the articles and news reporting that I share there is, or I should say are, grammar attack, are foreign sources, because our friends from the party opposite or self-identified party opposite don't trust anything domestic. So I tend to do the overwhelming majority of my sharing from foreign sources. And they've been reporting going back over a year, if not more, that I happen to find myself sitting in what is the swing county for the entire presidential election, Northampton County. So, if the swing county in the swing state you and I sit in at the moment. So I hope you're right. I hope there's veterans. I hope there's veterans on bases. I hope we have listeners across the country. We do have listeners and viewers around the world. We're very, very proud to be part of the hot101.net family, wherever folks are listening. I know that folks log in to hot101.net from New Zealand, from spots around Europe, from Australia, from South America. So you and I happen to be at ground zero, sir. We are in ground zero. How does that feel?
I don't want to be anywhere else, man. If you're going to be in the middle of a battle for the really heart of what the democracy really is all about, put me right in the center of the storm, and I'm happy there. That's where I fit.
Well, let's get back on track after after I shook my get off my lawn finger at my technical gremlins and so on, and had my complaints. So again, thank you very much for being here. We are not just you are not just a guest here. We've had the opportunity to meet outside of this program. We had a lengthy pre-show phone conversation. So for my part, I say to you, thank you for being here. And we are not just presenter and guest. I consider us friends, and I thank you for doing this for me and for the program and for the people who will be watching. So let us begin the program the way that we generally always begin the program here. You've also been kind enough to watch a couple past episodes, so I appreciate that as well. Who is Todd Eachus, and how did you get here?
Pretty simple. Grew up here in northeastern Pennsylvania, son of a single mother. My mom was an inspiration to me. She was a woman who led at the Luzerne County Courthouse, the very first female administrator in 1973. Our courthouse was run completely by men in those days. So as a single son of a single mom who was active in politics, I started out when I was 10 folding mail in the basement for all the other ladies who were aspiring to higher office in Luzerne County. So, it's kind of in my bloodstream. I went off to college in Los Angeles, as I was telling George. Spent 5 years on the West Coast after I graduated from high school here in Wilkes-Barre. And, in that opportunity, I got an opportunity to do an internship for my U.S. congressman here, who was at the time in 1982, a Republican by the name of Jim Nelligan. Caught the fever and went straight back to the U.S. Capitol after I graduated, an internship for then Paul Kanjorski, the U.S. congressman from the 11th Congressional District, for about 25 years, and got a job straight away at the U.S. Capitol. I was trained by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, ran elections in New Jersey for a U.S. congressman by the name of Frank Guarini, in Jersey City, Hoboken, and Bayonne. So, if you can cut your teeth and
I remember that name.
You learn how to do the politics right. And, then I had an opportunity to come home and run the family business for a while. My stepdad, Sam Valenti, passed away of leukemia in 89 and came home and ran the business in 89. And in 96, I ran for the State House for the first time and won that election and served for 14 years, finishing at the Pennsylvania House of Representatives as both the policy committee chairman elected by my peers, and then I happened to be the last Democratic House Majority Leader and Rules Committee chairman. That was 10 years ago, in 2010.
Who was governor then, Todd?
So I had Governor Rendell in his final term, 2011. You may remember we had Governor Corbett start in 2011 as I exited. So I've been gone like Rip Van Winkle for 10 years, doing my own thing in the private sector. I've done national community development work in major cities across the country with the Opportunity Finance Network based in Philadelphia. And now I run my own distribution business. I work with my son, Nate, who he and I are both in the hemp business. So I've been doing industrial hemp CBD for the last 4 years. And it's a passion for me. I truly believe that hemp presents a huge opportunity for farmers in Pennsylvania, as well as in areas that I work in wellness and other areas there too. So, hey, it's great to be back. And as I said, I threw my name in the hat in February, circulated petitions, got myself nominated. There was no opposition in the primary. And I'm running against Representative Tara Toohill, who served for 10 years. And I'm looking forward to November.
So you've done this before. You've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Why do it again?
Well, my wife asked me the same question. So I'll give you the same answer I give her, because I'm consistent. You know, I come from a region in southern Luzerne County. Hazleton's the largest city down here, and we've got a lot of problems. We have a public school that's in the bottom 5% on performance. We have a career center that's 600 out of 605 in the state. And when I served, we were in the top 40% of performance. So we've seen a quantum shift in the quality of education here. We also have a large and growing Latino population growing in southern Luzerne County. The city of Hazleton, which was probably only about 15 or 20% Latino residents in 2010 when I left public service. Today, it's the census people tell me there's 72% Latino residents in the city of Hazleton, and the population is pretty much the same. So these issues of racial change and now the city becoming a city of color presents another opportunity to really be able to lead on the progressive social justice issues that I always believed in when I was in the State House. But there's a whole new generation of people who want to enable themselves to be leaders in this community. And I want to be a bridge to that, teaching them an opportunity and working closely with rebuilding a Democratic Party in Southern Luzerne County, you know, educating people about what civics and political action is all about, because you and I both know, Jeff, every major thing that's ever happened in this country comes from political action. So, you know, it's a great opportunity to come in at a very difficult time in Southern Luzerne County and rebuild a party in Luzerne County that's gone from blue to purple.
I make an effort on this program to try to keep things chronological. I don't always do that. I think the nature of an organic conversation does not always allow that. So I will do my best to stay chronological, and I hope you'll forgive me if I tend to jump around. That's not my intention. But again, you've been in this business, this political business. Sadly, I don't always like to refer to it as a business. It's not a business. Business tends to give us the impression that there's money involved, but sadly there is money involved. But it tends to give the impression that there's profit involved, and there shouldn't be profit involved. But you've been in this business a long time. What are being born and raised in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, and I know that there's a lot of listeners and viewers who may not know the geography, but I encourage you to quickly bring up a Google map or whatever map you fancy, even if it's an old paper one, to see where that is. Phillipsburg is generally regarded as the easternmost point of the Lehigh Valley, even though it is in New Jersey and the Delaware River doesn't separate us. It's still considered part of the Lehigh Valley. The changes that has happened to the Commonwealth have been dramatic, to say the least. Just to think about where I am at the moment, which is in Hellertown, I can still throw a rock to where Bethlehem Steel used to be. Well, I guess you could say it's still there. I mean, the blast furnaces are there, but the factory itself obviously hasn't done anything since the early 90s. You've been in Pennsylvania a very long time. What is the Pennsylvania that you see now from the Pennsylvania from when you started? Because it would seem to me.
Yep, sure.
it would seem to me that despite the efforts of a lot of good people and the citizenry of a lot of good people, and even when I look at the remaking of a city like Bethlehem or the rebirth of large sections of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, the remaking of a place like Pittsburgh after the depths of the death of the steel industry, I'm not sure I can argue that it's been an upward trajectory. What do you see as this chronological? What do you see from the Pennsylvania from where you started to where it is now?
Well, they used to use this term like, that when we try to attract businesses to our region, that we had an excellent work ethic. To me, that means we'll work cheap. And in a lot of cases, you mentioned Philadelphia's revival and Pittsburgh's revival. I've been lucky enough to spend time in both of those cities, and you can see the urban renewal. But if you look at small towns like Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Allentown, Hazleton, whether you go west to Sharon and other small third-class cities in the western part of the state, Washington in the southern part of the state, these small towns have not seen
York
revitalization. They have not seen urban revitalization, and third-class cities are strapped. They're up against their tax. Most cases, they've got their taxes maxed out. Their population is either stable or shrinking. Their labor markets have changed. In the East, not so much in the West. We've seen the demographic shift of large corporations. I have Amazon, Cargill, AutoZone. They have fulfillment centers here, and they pay people, a wage of somewhere between 10 and 15 bucks an hour, which was less than it was 10 years and 15 years ago. We still had a lot of labor jobs here, organized labor jobs. They were more like 18 to 22. Those jobs have gone. They've been replaced with lower wage jobs from companies who are the most profitable in the world and don't give a cent back to our local communities. They don't make an attempt to make increases and improvement in housing. You don't see outside investment being matched by corporations like Amazon across the Commonwealth. And they have 11 corporate sites in Pennsylvania. It's as if they targeted us as small, poor towns who don't have any assets and can't fight back. Well, I want to warn you, political action, it takes time. And this change that you talk about, what it used to be and what it is, look, there's still a lot of pride here. The people of our region of Pennsylvania, we still have a lot of pride about what we do and how we work and where we live. And, even if you're up here in the country where I am, I have an urban rural district. There's still a lot of people who hang on to their traditions of hunting and fishing and outdoorsmen. They care for the environment, but, we can't look the other way either. I mean, where I come from, we have the dirtiest stretch of the Susquehanna running right down the middle of the 116th district. We have open mine pits from Shamokin all the way to Carbondale, and nobody's making any attempt to fix that environmental damage. We have a nuclear power plant up here, like in Harrisburg. The 3 Mile Islands plant's closed now, but we have one here at Susquehanna. Used to be owned by PPL. It's owned by Tanny now. And the reality of that is there's only about 20 years of life on that, and we're going to be stuck with metric tons of nuclear waste along the river here. So, the Pennsylvania that it used to be isn't the Pennsylvania it is now. The people are in these small towns are struggling. They're making less, and they're feeling the pressure. And I think they felt like every president that's walked through here for the last 30 years that I've seen, whether it was Clinton, Bush, whether it was Obama or Bush too, they all made promises that these small towns are going to be brought back, and these are broken promises. So, I'm hopeful that with a president on the ballot from Pennsylvania, that we'll have somebody with an ear to what our problems are, because we got to face these things head on.
5:31 Eastern Time. 5:31 in the Eastern Time Zone of the United States. Coming to you from Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is the Kennedy Effect for 13 September 2020. My guest is the Honorable and my friend Todd Eachus, running to return to the Pennsylvania State House from the 116th District from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Wherever you are watching us on Facebook, any one of the 40 plus places that I share the program to, that I make the show announcement to. First off, I hope everybody approves it. They usually seem to do so. If you are watching live, thank you. If you watch on a recording, thank you. You are honored here. I know that we have folks from all over the political spectrum that watch this program each week. You may not admit it, folks, but you know you're there. We welcome you. You are respected here. Whether we always agree or not is not the point. The point is you're respected here. And we have these conversations that carry on through the week. The number of friend requests that I begin to get through the week is quite alarming. And they seem to be coming from across the country. And I'm honored by that. I thank you for that. And they're coming from all over the political spectrum, by the way. And I appreciate that as well. However, that said, so wherever you're watching, we thank you for that. It is the home group page where I am watching and monitoring right now, where I will see that you are watching, where I'll actually see your name. I will say hello to you, and that is where I will see your comments and questions. That other side of information. You're listening live on hot101.net. Thank you, family. Thank you, hot101.net family. Thank you to DJ Lexus, DJ Earl, and my producer, partner, friend, and all too often, sadly, psychiatrist, April Riddick. I appreciate you, and I love you, my friend. She's not here at the moment, but I know she's listening, so thank you, April. You don't know how to listen to hot101.net? It's extremely easy. Go to the home website page at, you got it, hot101.net. You can listen to hot101.net by getting the app at the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. If you have an Android device, you can also get hot101.net through the TuneIn Radio app. Also, do you have a business, product, service, anything that you want to announce to the world? Do it right here, and you can have these lovely dulcet tones announce it to the planet. Just drop us an email, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Thatotherkennedy, all one word, at gmail.com. Todd, there's how has it been? From all of your previous political experience, how has it been being a candidate in this time? And I would say that not just from the obvious, which would be the virus, but also this extreme political time. I posted an article last night where Roger Stone told the president he should declare martial law and deploy troops nationwide if he were to lose this election. In a past era in this country, we would take to the floor of the United Nations and decry that as third world. Seems to me we've approached, if not crossed the threshold into third world. How has it been being a candidate in these times? Whether we see, actually, I begin to see video each day of campaign signs being ripped out of people's yards, and not just at the curb close to the street, but signs that are on porches. I see property being damaged because signs are zip tied to fences. I see houses that are vandalized because they happen to have what the vandalizer happens to consider to be the wrong political ideal. We see protests, counter protests, and they're not always pretty. We see unmarked troops in Portland and Chicago, not coincidentally Democratic cities. How has it been? You've been out there, and I think you've been out there perhaps more, not perhaps, actually, we talked about this. I should correct myself. You've been out there physically being out there in the public more than a lot of other candidates in this safely, by the way, in this virus time. Just how has it been being a candidate in this era, at these times, in these days, especially because you have the experience to look back on in past campaigns? I mean, how has it been for you?
Well, it's different. You know, when you have to spend the first 4 months of the campaign kind of behind closed doors with no way to reach people except social media, every candidate had to make decisions to go digital. So we did that as well, and we reached out through Facebook and Instagram and did the best we could. But as a candidate who's always canvassed aggressively and knocked on doors, I really think that voters need to know who the candidate is before they run. And this district has been gerrymandered significantly since 2010. So, you know, 2/3 of this legislative district as it exists today, those people didn't know me in my previous service. So, as you said, as soon as things quieted down a bit about 6-8 weeks ago, I made a decision to hit the streets. Most Democratic candidates and Republican candidates across the state have chosen not to canvass, but I go out with my mask on. I knock, I then maintain a proper social distance. I'll leave the door hanger on the door, step back. And I found that people are absolutely thrilled to be able to talk to somebody in person. Proper distance, proper mask, but you know, you learn what's going on in neighborhoods. You know, as I told you, I have geographic areas that I haven't been to, and I started there in places like Salem Township, right up against the Columbia County line, and the small towns of Mackinac, Shikshini, which are along their river towns along the Susquehanna River, in rural areas like Cunningham Township, where you know you have someone who's dropping you at driveways and then picking you up and taking you and drive and drop, so to speak, because the houses are a quarter mile apart. So I've been very happy with the greetings that I've gotten from the community, but I've also found out what's going on in the neighborhoods that people are concerned about, which I always believe are crucial in order to do it. So, but the tone has changed. I have been met with some negativity because I'm knocking on Democrat and Republican doors. It didn't used to be so visceral. We could actually talk in 96 to 2010 with Republicans and have an interaction. The polarity of, you know, the dichotomy of both parties being kind of pushed out left and right, and no centrists left to speak of. We feel the same thing happening in people's homes. And so I'm okay. I don't make it personal. If you don't want to talk to me, you want to go bah humbug and throw my paper on the ground and say, get the F off my front porch, you have the right to do so. It's America. So I don't take it personally, but there is more of that. Yesterday we did a voter registration drive in Hazleton, and I always wave at traffic on corners. I hold my sign, you know, do the corner wave. I always done it. I've been doing it since I was a kid with my mom. And
You do the Queen's wave.
Right, exactly. It's the Queen's wave, or the one you're going to do in a parade. But you know what you get is hooray, hooray from your side, and F you out the window from cars going by. This wasn't the way it's always been. People would be like, okay, like this or like this, but it wouldn't be like scramble the window down and you go, ugh! Right. You know, whatever the is, you know, it's a negative swear or whatever. And it's always the same angry face. You know, I try and maintain a happy mental attitude, you know, so it has changed. And we have had to go digital, except I've decided to break the frame and go out and knock on doors and meet people. And I've been greeted graciously for the most part.
Have you, of the candidates that because I have another hat. Oh, I have a lot of hats that I wear, sadly, but I have, well, maybe not sadly, but I have a lot of hats that I wear. I have a lot of hats that I wear mostly because I have a COVID cut, because I haven't been able to get to a barber. So I do it myself. I hide a butcher job up here. And, but among the other hats that I wear, obviously, is consulting. And I encourage the candidates that I work with to get out and meet people, because I don't think they have been talked to enough by their representatives. And I would say in part, not universally. I don't think you can universally say that about anything in a country of 330 million people. But I don't think they've been talked to enough by their representatives, generally speaking, period. Have you found, well, that might be a leading question. What do you find when you knock on the door and you say, I'm Todd Eachus and I'm running? I mean, what do you say? Are they shocked? Because I get a lot of that from the candidates that I talk to when they do canvass, or sometimes even when they make the phone call themselves. And the person on the other end of the phone says, another campaign call. And the candidate said, no, I'm the candidate. Talk to me. What do you, and people will say, I remember having this conversation with Cole Goodman a lot. No, I'm the candidate. What do you, and people literally would tell Cole, I've never had a candidate knock on my door. What do you get? What's the general reaction that you get from folks when you show up on their doorstep? What do you get? I mean, the not violent ones, obviously, but I'm saying, what is the general reaction? Are they happy to see you? Are they shocked to see you? Are they generally receptive, even if not agreeable? What do you get?
Well, I started right as the pandemic was kind of, slowing. As it slowed, I decided to go. And so the early days, the conversations were fairly short. People were reticent that I had my mask on, I was maintaining social distance, and that I wanted to make sure that they knew who I was. Look, as I say to the voters, look, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that you know who I am. And if you wish to take a little time to talk about either issues in your neighborhood or issues at the state level, these issues haven't been covered, Jeff. You see the devolution of local media, all these local newspapers and the national media, they've been covering one thing and one thing only forever and ever. It's like the presidency.
Why we do this program, Todd. It's part of why we do this program.
Right. So, it's there. The coverage is up here. And so you've seen a reduction in conversations about state and local levels. So when I talk to them, I'll give you an example. I give them a talk to where I live in Butler Township. We have the Hazelland Area School District here. So when I talk to people in Butler Township, I talk about two things. One, do you realize we got a pandemic property tax increase just this past month? Did you look at your bill yet? And a lot of people have, and they're very upset that there's no explanation from either the media or incumbents who have promised property taxes but not delivered for like 30 years. Even when I was there, we did a couple of things to reduce property taxes, like the property tax rent rebate program under Governor Ridge. And then again, under Rendell, we put the slot machine revenue into the gaming, from the gaming into revenue. It's not as much as it should be.
And let me just say, before you continue, and I will let you continue, let me just mention, you just said it, under Governor Ridge. That's a Republican governor, Democratic leader.
Yeah.
You did that across party lines and you made that happen. I just want to highlight that we had a time, there was a time in the Commonwealth where cross-party cooperation occurred. I just want to make that. Sorry, Todd, I'm going to let you finish. I just wanted to make that point that there was a time in the Commonwealth. I promise, folks, I promise you, there was a time in the Commonwealth, just the same way I like to inform people that there was a United States before 1980. I swear to God there was. And it existed and it worked and it functioned and it was, we had the largest middle class on the planet. And people got rich and big corporations were created. I promise. I swear. Google it. I swear to God. It's one of the wonderful things about the internet. It is a sum total history, the sum and total of all of human history at your fingertips. Have a look at it. Have a look at it. We were here before Reagan. I swear to God, the country existed. And it worked. It functioned. I promise. Have a look. Same thing for inside the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I understand if you're listening outside the Commonwealth, you might think to yourself, well, who cares about that? There's still a lesson to be learned. There was a time where legislation got passed and worked on for the benefit of the people that lived inside of it across party lines. That's the point that Todd just made. He made it very quickly because for the time that he was there, it was relatively commonplace. We kind of skip over it. It is rare, if not impossible now. And it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be. Except that one party, sorry, no, I'm not sorry, to be honest, but I know that we have listeners from the party opposite. One party's wholly owned now and off the bloody rails. We can do these things because we've done them before. Apologies, Todd. Please.
Oh, no, but
please. Apologies. Please finish.
No. It's okay. Kerry Benninghoff, the House Republican Majority Leader, and I, we were in the same freshman class in 1996. Now he stayed the entire time. I left for 10 years, but I like Kerry on a personal level. He and I are friendly. Brian Cutler, the Speaker of the House, he was a young freshman legislator when I was in the House, and he and I would get together and he would help me coordinate activities through to his leadership when I was leading. So you're right. But I think there's another problem too. As I say, I'm knocking on doors and I'm telling people about property tax increases that just took place from school districts that were strapped by these crazy budgets that have been passed. They reduce the amount of funding to public education over the last 10 years, and they expect that school districts will be able to get through it in the worst of times during the pandemic. They didn't. Many school districts across the state are now raising school property taxes. And the other thing fits into what you're saying about bipartisanship. I represented 14 local governments in my previous time. And those local governments were predominantly Republican. That didn't matter to me. The only thing that mattered was to try to understand what these local governments required from the state and try to accomplish that at the local level, whether it's a building or a fire company or a shed for salt or a community center, whatever. You try to accomplish those things.
Because you represented every single person in the district, whether they voted for you or not.
Well, your job is to represent each person, all, right? Each of us, not just, whatever, right? But what's happened is now transparency of local government, talking about townships and boroughs and cities, has become less and less. And the public feels like they're not getting good information from state elected officials who no longer have town meetings and talk and aren't covered by media, as I said earlier, and then local governments who make arbitrary decisions like mine in Butler Township. They built a $6 million township building for 3 supervisors, 3 secretaries, and 9 peace officers. It's $6 million. We don't have a $3 million home in Butler Township. Tax base is pretty much, $150,000 to $250,000 ranches and, colonials. And so when you see this overspending at the local level and a lack of transparency from local governments, and you see no explanation from higher elected folks like it's the state Senate and state House where these things are happening and then the public doesn't know, I'm finding out that's the number one issue as I'm knocking on doors and talking to my neighbors, is that they're pissed off about the fact that they no longer get good information from their elected officials, and stuff happens and they learn about it afterwards, and not all of it's good.
Todd, if I told you, I don't think this will surprise you, if I told you that since the inception, repackaging, reselling of the myth that is trickle-down economics. And although some would say, why is he getting into a national issue when he's predominantly talking Commonwealth politics? The Commonwealth is one of 50. So obviously what happens on the national level and, dare I say, global level will affect the Commonwealth. If I said to you that the average American, especially the 99%, is paying more taxes, a higher percentage of their income in taxes, federal, Commonwealth, county, local, now in real dollars, inflation adjusted dollars, higher percentage than they were in 1980, also making less real dollars, adjusted inflation dollars by any stretch of the measure, period. 83%, I want to say it is, of all the new wealth since 1980 has gone to the top 1%. 100% of all the new wealth has gone to the top 1% since the year 2000. In fact, the bottom 99% has lost nearly $1 trillion in new wealth. We have crossed a threshold where not only is all the new wealth going to the top 1%, we are now extracting wealth from the bottom 99%. If I told you these things when you are talking as you were about people being pissed off, do those statistics make sense to you?
Well, it goes like this. So I knocked on a door, woman answered, about 70 years old, and another woman walked up alongside of her. I found out they were sisters, and I said, did you realize that you got this property tax increase from the Hazelton Area School District on your tax bill? And she says to her sister, Ann, run and get the bill. She comes back, she opens the mail at the front door, and she's got a $450 increase on a really small little house, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, she told me. And she had tears in her eyes because she said, my sister lost her home last year on a sheriff's sale. She couldn't pay the taxes. And we were so close together that we're about not to make the budget. And this $450 matters like the world to me. So it's aging. It's as I said, a reduction in hourly wages because we have these profitable companies like Amazon who come in and prey on our town, fix the.
They're all over here too. They have several buildings in the Lehigh Valley.
Right. And so that you can't make more than $15 an hour at Amazon. If you want to make $15.50, you got to find another job.
Correct.
Right. So you have an aging of the population, a reduction in income. You also have, like if you look at the rural communities, small family farms are shrinking at an alarming rate. And this whole trade war over soy and corn prices has put a real tough situation for family farms. So how do we get through this? What do we do? I mean, how do we perceive the future? Because I like to maintain a positive mental attitude that all things are possible if people stick together. I really believe we have to do a new compact between rural and urban communities. In many of our small towns like Hazelton, Scranton, Sharon, other places in the West like Washington, you have a small third-class city and then a rural ring around. So you have, rural communities and farm and suburban, and you have a tough industrial small town that's mostly, these towns are in tough shape. We have to find a way to create an urban-rural coalition between our cities and our rural communities to revitalize things that matter, because we know that fresh foods and healthy foods are close by. Our farmers have some of the finest foods. We need to revitalize that interaction so we can get better food and not just have to buy at Walmart for the cheapest price. We need to reinvest in rural communities and do broadband so that those communities can have the same internet access that you and I have right here, right? Some of these towns in rural communities,
which still doesn't always work, by the way. It's,
right.
we're not exactly dealing with the broadband that they're dealing with in Philadelphia or New York City. Let's be honest.
Some of those poorest neighborhoods in some of our largest cities still don't have connectivity. So it's about being low income and low wealth, you know? And it's about figuring out a way to try to do things differently, you know, because we're in a pandemic, and everything that was normal and screwed up before the pandemic, as you described, gives us a chance to revisit these programs, because how we fund governments has to be looked at, local governments, how we fund highways and roadways, because our roads are in crappiest condition I've ever seen, and we're throwing more money at them than we ever have. So you're looking at all these kind of problems, but we have to reconsider them all. I think we have to really throw our hands up in the air in 2011, look closely at how we're spending money, whether it's public education. Public education is a perfect example. Now we have to fund cyber public schools, right? We have to find solutions for schools that are failing so that parents aren't trapped with alternatives that don't add up. Just going back to the same school that's not failing your kids when they're in the bottom 5%. These things have to be reconsidered. So I really think it's a full reconsideration of how we fund all the major things that we do in Pennsylvania, whether it's roadways or education, whether it's our tax system. We have to really take a clean look at this and try and find a sense of bipartisanship. Look, I've been watching the Capitol, and so have you, Jeff. All they're doing is squabbling about what should have been open during the COVID pandemic, what should have been closed. Should we do football games, and should we let kids play basketball in the gym? You know, should we open small businesses or shouldn't we? Some of that's political pandering to interest groups.
Some?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give.
I would say it's nearly all.
I'm still trying to leave some room to talk to people when I get there. You know.
Yeah, I would say it's nearly all. You don't have to say it. You don't have to say it. As the presenter, I get a bit of leeway. I'm not campaigning, and I'm not knocking doors. I would say it's nearly all political posturing, and I would add to that it's not at the beginning of this. To me, this is my impression of it. When we go back to April, May, June, when we began to lob Molotov cocktails from the legislature into the governor's office, my reading of it was, at least the reporting that was coming out of Harrisburg, and some of it is just poor, it wasn't so much the complaints of what the governor was doing. It was, hey, we didn't get a hand in it. Nobody talked to us. We didn't get any press. We didn't get a quote. We're not get our picture taken. And as I follow it, and I follow the timeline of it, and I don't always agree with the governor. I sometimes believe him to be too quiet and too passive. At times when he needs to be out in front, and dare I say, kicking you know what and taking names. It seems to me that there are large swaths of the Commonwealth, you are in one of them, where he's kind of played it quite cleverly. The counties were declared emergency. The red counties were all up in arms. You can't tell us what to do. You can't do this. You don't have the power to do that. We clearly had the power to do that. It's right in the Constitution. Read it. So then he institutes the stoplight system to back us back out. And I would say, to be fair, that the red counties did have some points because they are so lightly populated that they had, some of them literally had a handful of cases. And that maybe they didn't need the same restrictions that my county did, being a commuter county.
And my county.
And your county. And I can understand that argument, actually. I think it's quite a fair argument. So then they complained vigorously about everything he did. So then we institute the stoplight type system, red, yellow, green. backs them out into green, cases go up. Then they go back to him and say, well, now we need your help because the cases went up. And for all intent and purpose, he basically said, well, you wanted to handle it on your own, now go handle it. And then that wasn't good enough. So which is it? You can't have both. So when you say that this is somewhat political, kind of is it's exceptionally political. It is almost exclusively political. And this is what, and doesn't this kind of go back to what we were talking about before? That you managed to accomplish things in your tenure at the State House before, you managed genuine accomplishment across party lines. And that system, those lanes of communications are gone. They haven't just broken down. They're not just rusty pieces of metal. They're gone. Those lines are cut. They've been pulled up out of the ground and they're gone. And they're not just gone because everybody doesn't like each other. They're gone, it appears to me anyway, they're gone just for the sake of posturing and press and photo op and fundraising and checks from big corporations and who's running for governor next and who can be on Facebook more. But that's my particular view of it. You're campaigning. You may not be able to agree with all that, but that happens to be my view of it.
As I was saying, I was just being a little polite. You laid out pretty clear. And, you know, just using one example early, it just seemed chaotic to me. My opponent, we have Cargill meatpacking plant here where we had a death. It was, you know, and a very hot COVID situation in my zip codes here. These plants are 1,200 people, large fulfillment centers, no PPEs. They were working without any protection, being forced to stay on the job by their employers. If you leave, you'll lose your job, right? Sounds like coal country in 1890, right? So it to me, you know, having this political pandering, so to speak, like what happened was Cargill got hot. My opponent did like a neat social media feed. Oh, thank you for bending the curve. And then the mayor of Hazleton put a curfew in place early, like third week in April, going into March. The very next week, the Republicans in the State House voted along with my opponent, Tara Hill, to reopen small businesses in across Pennsylvania when we have a curfew in our town and the hottest zip code in like Pennsylvania. So
you mean the self-identified small government, home rule, local control, stay out of my bedroom Republicans voted to override local authority.
Right. And they were,
you mean those folks?
As you say, they're trying to be oppositional to the governor, make themselves relevant when they're in the middle of a pandemic. You know, they changed the rules too. Used to be tradition that you had to be in your seat on the floor to vote. Mm-hmm. Republicans expanded that so members could vote from their home and from the safety of your second bedroom, you know? And so
my humble home-built studio.
Right, here in my study, you can see. So you know, it's we've decentralized the voting. So you know, for a lot of reasons, you know, you got to reconsider all this. You know, I'm extremely unhappy with my own party. Let me say that. I left it for 10 years. I worked in the private sector for 10 years. And part of the reason I'm also coming back is because I don't think the minority leader's done his job. And I'm not going to call out him by name, but the minority leader and the other leaders haven't given candidates like myself anything that I can look to and say, hey, here's what we believe on healthcare. Here's what we believe on economic development. Here's what we believe. That doesn't exist. And I realize we're in a COVID environment, but even before the pandemic, we weren't articulating what our core values were, like our president is, and like our state congressional delegation and our US senators are. we are not articulating as a party from Harrisburg what it is that should attract people to our party, and really focus on helping real people like that lady at the door on the verge of losing her house over a property tax increase. So, I get a sense that, okay, the Republicans have overplayed their hands by attacking the governor. My party hasn't done enough. They just haven't done enough. And I'm going to lay it out at the state capitol. They haven't done enough. They've gotten trapped in this situation where they have to react and react. That's not what we need to do. We need to lead forward. We need to create confidence in the things that we're thinking about, rethink how these programs need to go, take a majority and change it. The other thing, Jeff, is the Republicans have controlled the state house for 34 years. Only 4 of the 34 had house control. As I said, I served for 2 of those as the last House Majority Leader. We need to take a majority position again in this election, ask people to vote for change, eliminate these incumbents who have been around for too long, bring a whole wave of new people who want to come in and provide a progressive agenda and focus on redesigning failed programs that aren't funding our schools adequately, aren't funding our economic development adequately, aren't bringing the kind of jobs that hold our children in town. The brain drain is the same way in Northampton County as it is up here in Luzerne. So, we have to reconsider these issues, maintain a positive attitude, and hopefully we can work together in a different way as we get a new president, a new Congress, and a new state House majority in the House and Senate.
6:07 on the Eastern Time Zone of the United States. I am coming to you from my humble second bedroom studio, as Todd mentioned. Close your eyes and you'll see the budget that's on this program. It's actually red. It's actually in the red, just to be honest with you. This is the Kennedy Effect for 13 September 2020. Wherever you are watching us across Facebook, over the 40 plus groups, pages, etc., that you may be watching, listening. If you are watching live or watching on recording, we thank you for being with us. Every single one of you is valued, respected, and we welcome you here. Views continue to be over 1,000 or more every single week. We thank you for that. We wish it was 10,000 or 100,000 or a million, but you have to plant the seed before the tree grows. This is the Kennedy Effect for 13 September. My guest is Todd Eachus. Wherever you are watching us on Facebook, thank you for being here. You can watch where you are, listen where you are. It is our home group page titled That Other Side of Information, where I will see your name and your question and your comment if you have one. That Other Side of Information. To our friends and family at hot101.net, thank you so much for being there, and thank you for welcoming us onto your devices, into your homes, your smart speakers, your cars, wherever it is that you listen to hot101.net. Thank you for being there. To my friend, producer, and partner, April Riddick, thank you for getting us, and DJ Lex and DJ Earl, thank you for making us part of the hot101.net family. We are thrilled to bring something new to hot101.net, education, information, and especially at this critical time in our each of our individual municipalities, our counties, our states, and our nation's history. You can listen to hot101.net by going to the main website page at hot101.net. You can get the hot101.net apps if you go to the Apple App Store. If you have an Android device, you can go to the Google Play Store, or you can just go to the TuneIn radio app and search for hot101.net. If you have a business, product, service that you want to introduce to the world, we can read your ad right here on the Kennedy Effect. Just drop us an email and let's talk about it. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. I should know my own email address, shouldn't I? thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Todd, we've talked actually, first off, I want to just say the top 1% has added since the, I don't want to say the inception, but since the real heavy onset of this, onset is the word I've been groping for, since the serious onset of this pandemic, the top 1% has added roughly $730 billion in new wealth. I just want to throw that out there for folks. The next time, if trickle down worked, we'd all be doing brilliantly, wouldn't we? I throw that out there to all of you listening and watching. The top 1% has added $737 billion with a B, billion dollars in new wealth in the United States, not globally, just in the United States. If trickle down worked, if it was real and not the myth that it is, you wouldn't have the party opposite screaming to get new businesses open for their survival. We'd all be swimming in money, except we're not, because the top 1% has hoarded that money and kept it. If you're Jeff Bezos and you're worth $200 billion, another billion or so is the same as a penny to you and me, or another blade of grass to a golf course. It is meaningless. Trickle down is a myth. It does not work. It has never worked. It never will. Why were Republicans so apoplectic at the $600 initial additional benefit at the onset of this pandemic? $600 being based on a $15 an hour, 40-hour work week. Why was it? Why was it a raise for so many folks in this country? Because there are that many folks who are dramatically underpaid. And even at the onset of this pandemic, when so much of our country was closed down for our safety, and even more so for the safety of a health, quote unquote, system that could not handle the number of patients. And that's the real reason that most of the nation was shut down, is because we have a health industry that could not handle the number of people getting sick. We were asked and guided to stay home so that a fragile, for-profit health system, industry. I should stop using the word system. You have a circulatory system. We have a health industry. We were asked and guided to stay home so that health industry did not collapse under its own fragility. Even at the beginning of that $600, that additional $600 above and beyond the paltry unemployment benefits in some sections of this country, the Commonwealth included, and the rest of the Confederacy, was a raise. Consumer spending actually ticked up slightly because it was a raise for most people. That's how an economy works. When you depend on 100% of the money that you bring in to exist, to survive, that's how an economy works. The constant flow of money. Another billion when you're worth 200 billion could fall out of your pocket. You wouldn't even know it. You would know it if you're the guy that picked it up. Todd, the Commonwealth, PA, has the highest, by a good stretch, gas tax in the nation. For every 10 gallons of gas that you buy, it's $8 in gas tax. We were told that that money would be spent on infrastructure. How are the roads in your district?
They suck. They're a patchwork of four-season potholes. When, I was a kid, it seemed like we had potholes only in the winter. Now they last all year.
Who was in control of the legislature when that was passed?
Well, it was Republicans have been in control for 34 out of 36 years. So Republicans passed it, and you haven't seen the measurable benefits. If you look at how we split the money, we give money to townships and boroughs, a local share. We give money to counties, and then we also give money to the state DOT system that is supposed to be able to provide, all of our highways and state roads. But each element has been cut over the last 10 years. Local governments have less manpower on the road. Counties have less manpower on the road, and state uses many more contractors instead of DOT employees. So you see the shrinkage of manpower and an increase in spending, which just doesn't get the job done. That's why I say, at post-pandemic, we need to consider each stream of what state government's providing as a core service, whether it's education, whether it's transportation and roads, whether it's taxation, whether it's, social services. We need to take a close look at these things and reconsider whether the programs that were created over the last 30 years work at all. Because the other thing that you've mentioned is the corkscrew of our economy. It was spinning like this before we hit this pandemic. Then it slowly stopped. Now it's starting to pick up again, but it's not nearly back to the rate of speed that we were at. So wherever this 1% of the wealthiest population lives, I can tell you, they ain't here in Luzerne County with me. The people who are here are struggling on their last dime. They're up against a $400 property tax bill that could cost them their house. They're struggling with failing schools, crummy roads, and we're all wondering, what happened? Look, bottom line is we need new majorities. We need a new way of thinking. We need people who will go to the Capitol and cooperate with one another rather than just, ping pong issues back and forth, blame the governor, blame whatever. Stop blaming each other, work together, and let's figure out we're going to fix this because it needs fixing.
When it comes to the roads specifically, and I think you can make this case for a lot of other departments in all levels of government, be they municipal, county, commonwealth, national. Because when we look from a national point of view, when we look at the largest socialistic entity on the planet, the United States military, 55% of the budget goes to private contractors now. Contractors who largely do functions that the military itself used to perform for itself, i.e. setting up camps, cooking, uniforms, et cetera, not just weaponry, but
Halliburton.
Right. Yeah. Among others. Yes. But, troops used to set up their own mobile camps. These troops used to cook for themselves. Troops used to make clean their own uniforms, so on and so on. They don't do that anymore. The private contractors do that. It might be a difficult question to get terribly specific on, but is it time for government to re-examine where direct government, not intervention,
like re-engineering?
Isn't it time to make the case that, as I happen to believe, by the way, there are functions that when government does them directly, it is actually less expensive. We have been sold this bill of goods over the past 40 years, especially. I believe that the Reagan era actually kind of began with Nixon, but obviously the Reagan era began with Reagan. That's why we call it the Reagan era. But we've been sold this bill of goods that the private sector always does everything less expensively and more efficiently. And I happen to think that's a load of crap for the most part. There are things that the private sector can do, but there are some things that government does directly that is less expensive and more efficient. Are roads one of those things, in your opinion? Especially given the fact that we pay so much gas tax in the Commonwealth.
It's a good question. The other factor, and I'll just add this, and then I'll answer your question. The other factor is that Pennsylvania has been losing population, and we've lost congressional seats. You go all the way back to those years when you were talking about, the Nixon years. We had 15 more congressmen, 10 more congressmen, because our population was greater. We've shrunk, and you've seen population move to Florida, Texas, and other states. So that reduces the amount of federal share money that we get in the calculation from the road for road construction and highway construction. We get less per dollar than we used to. At the same time, we raised our state share to the highest share, right, of most states. I'd have to see what the equation is to see if the federal share and the population loss has hampered our ability to actually make the whole nut. But I think it's about redesigning the way we work. In Luzerne County alone, we have dozens of local governments. Each have their own trucks and equipment. Each has their own couple of 3 guys trying to fix their roads. Sometimes there's 1 guy, sometimes there's 2 guys. Then you got the county group with like pods in each zone, and they've been reducing their manpower over the last 10 years. And the state, they've shrunken, and as I said, they're outsourcing. So what happened at the beginning of the Ridge administration when we started in 1996, and I have a lot of respect for Governor Ridge, he doesn't believe in using federal troops against American citizens. There's some wisdom in that, right? And what he did at the beginning was he created something called the Impact Commission that I served on in 94 before I was in the House. And what he did is he looked at each department in state government and said, what's working and what's didn't. And we did find out that there were departments that were providing core services like services to those who are mentally challenged and needed housing, that the cost of actually providing our state centers and housing was less than what was being provided for-profit entities in the community. So we learned that some things were working and some were. We learned that prescription drugs were being overcharged by pharma on most every single program we had. So we went back in, we renegotiated in the 90s and 2000s, a PACE program that expanded prescription drugs by almost 300,000 new people because we took money away from pharma and asked co-payments to go up just a little bit for consumers. So my thought process is that this re-engineering you're thinking about, whoever, and I wish the governor would do it in 2021, because post-pandemic, we need to look at all these departments. We need to look at all these programs. We need to look at how they're working, because in my opinion, a lot of them just aren't working at all. And whether it's a manpower issue on roads, whether it's failing schools and a lack of local share, money from school districts that are becoming less and less, the wages are dropping and household incomes dropping. I think we got to look at it all. So how we look at that departmentally from a government perspective inside Pennsylvania, see what we're getting from the federal government on various programs, but then also be honest with the taxpayers. Hey, this isn't working. Come back in these town meetings and have conversations like we used to. What do you think about me raising the severance tax? Right? What do you think about me going back to the Capitol? I am going back. I'm telling the electorate in 116th district, I am going back to raise the severance tax. When they didn't do it in 2015, you would have received almost $3,500 in direct relief under the governor's plan. And our school districts may not be raising school property taxes because we passed up billions of dollars in revenue from people who say they're going to bring jobs to Pennsylvania and they don't. They say they're going to bring clean energy and they don't. We're the 4th highest state in CO2 of 50. So, I think we got to look closely at how we do it all and reconsider it all. But I'm going to go back. say my electorate, elect me, I'm going to pass the severance tax on oil and gas companies and make sure nobody takes and extracts a natural resource out of our ground, and we get zilch for it. What are we, suckers?
Why do
We
you
didn't pass
think?
that, and then we get a property tax increase. We don't pass that, and then you pass up like almost $3,500 in direct relief in rebates to citizens. This special interest groups backed us away from this.
Why do you believe that? I have my own opinions. I think it's been an excellent. One thing you can absolutely give the party opposite credit for, from Washington, and I could probably make an argument actually from an international level on down, is they're brilliant at marketing. They're brilliant at buzzwords. They're brilliant at encapsulating very large ideas onto bumper stickers, even if they're lies, and many of them are. Why do you think the thought of an extraction tax is so controversial?
Well, I can give you an opinion from 2009-10, because when they found the Marcellus shale field, I was in Democratic leadership. We didn't know it existed in the middle 2000s. And there were no jobs in that sector at that point. You know, we hadn't built pipelines. We hadn't built the redistribution centers for natural gas. There wasn't wells being drilled in the year 2000. Now, fast forward 10 years, you have labor unions and now support the natural gas industry 1,000% from the Democratic coalition.
There's an extraction tax in every other place where fracking takes place. Everywhere else, they have an extraction tax. I've used this example before, and I realize that you and I agree on this. So I'm pushing back, to borrow an expression. I'm preaching to the choir to an extent, but let me push back just for the sake of the audience. I'm your neighbor. You and I literally live next to each other. I do not own a vehicle, but you do. I come over, I hop the fence, and I take your car. And I literally use it whenever I want. I just take it and I use it. I get my groceries. I use it or worse yet, I use it to drive Uber or DoorDash or whatever, fill in the blank. And then maybe I run it into a tree. Maybe I flatten the tires. Maybe I sideswipe somebody, or maybe I hit a pedestrian, and then I bring it back and I park it in your driveway. And whatever money I've made along the way, I don't give you a dime for it. I mean, isn't that essentially what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, it is, because, I come from an anthracite country, right?
You have something of wealth. I take it, use it, profit from it, and you get nothing for it.
Well, you may also get a polluted county like Susquehanna. Cabot Oil and Gas is under indictment from Attorney Josh Shapiro.
Finally.
Citizens of Susquehanna County for willfully polluting that region's water supply and virgin forest. And so I come from an area where you have miles and miles of open mine pits that were, done in the 1800s. They took all the energy out of the ground and it funded the Industrial Revolution, but they left us with a mess to clean up, and there's no money for it. So same situation, we have a natural resource, natural gas. It's under some areas of the Pennsylvania, but it's not under the coal region. If you live in coal country, there's no natural gas because geologically the gas goes into the coal, consolidates. And because we've undermined, our communities don't get any local share money. So if you under the Republican plan that was voted on in 2009, we set up a system with the majority of Republicans voting for a plan that would give local governments that have Marcellus in their county, gives them a local government share. we don't get anything in coal country, so we're suckers. I mean, we end up not allowing members like Tara Toohill and others to vote against the severance tax that takes a commodity out of here. And as you say, every other state in the union gets something.
Every man, woman, and child in the state of Alaska gets a benefit.
So we had a $5 to $6 billion shortfall today in Pennsylvania. $5 to $6 billion. It's not green grass and
should be $6.
Right?
Yeah, looking like it's going to be $6 billion.
Yes, it's going to be $6 billion. So what I'm asking Pennsylvanians and the people of my district to say, do you want me to come up with revenue, taxes, that's going to tax you? Or do you want me to tax the oil companies who are taking this stuff out of here and we're not getting a single thing for it? And my opponent, she voted against it. And in 5 years, from 2015 to today, people would have received about $3,500 in direct relief in checks under the governor's plan. And school districts would have gotten funding, which may have alleviated the school property taxes that people are experiencing during the pandemic. So I'm saying everybody, Democrats and Republicans who voted against the severance tax, they were wrong then, and you can see why they're wrong now. We run into a problem. There's no money for schools. People are getting their school property tax increased. I say the governor wanted about $1.5 billion in the severance tax. I say we need $2.5 billion from the oil and gas industry today to make sure that we adequately fund public education and give property tax relief to citizens that they deserve, something that's durable. So I'm going back to increased taxes. I'm going to increase the tax that wasn't passed in 2015, and I'm going to do more because our people need more right now, because they either get taxed directly through new taxes, or we find revenue from sources that should be paying us when they're taking something out of here that every other state in the union is getting something for.
6:33 Eastern Time Zone in the United States. This is the Kennedy Effect for 13 September 2020. Wherever you are with us on Facebook, thank you for being there live or recorded. Your presence is welcomed, appreciated, and respected. That other side of information is where we will see you with us, and we will see your comments and questions. A very quiet chat tonight. I don't know if everyone's just enjoying the cooler weather. They missed us for a week, and you're not sure how to jump in. Just jump in there, kids. Don't be shy. Jump straight in there. To our friends and family at hot101.net, thank you for being there. Wherever you are taking in the program, Bluetooth through the car, the Apple or Android apps, the TuneIn radio app, or at the main website, hot101.net. Thank you for welcoming us yet again onto your devices and speakers. If you want to advertise with the program, you can see it right over my left shoulder. Just drop us an email, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. My guest is my friend, my honored guest, Todd Eachus, candidate, Democratic nominee and candidate for the Pennsylvania State House to return to the State House from the 116th District at the Pennsylvania State House. And yes, he did it, kids. He did it. If you're watching, you can see it. The phone number is on the screen. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. Let me just walk you through that again. I know that sometimes the technical stuff gets a little boring and a little thick, but it's okay. Don't let it hurt you. Google Voice. We use a little program called Google Voice. You dial that phone number, my mobile rings, it forwards to this fun little program called Google Voice. I will see the phone call appear on the screen. I have no idea where you're calling from. All I see is a phone number. You give me your first name only so that no one stalks you and tracks you down. And then we would never do that. But then you get a chance to talk to Todd and myself, and then everyone around the globe will hear you. Don't be intimidated by that just because there are several billion people listening. Don't be intimidated by that, but you will have a chance to ask Todd your question or enter your comment on to the record. 267-227-9189. Todd, the big D Democratic Party, as opposed to small d Democratic Democracy, the big D Democratic Party is only 9 seats away from flipping the Pennsylvania State House, and I believe 5 seats, if my count is correct, from flipping the Pennsylvania State Senate. You and everything that you wish to see accomplished there is, in my mind, essentially, I would say probably impossible without that happening. What do you believe are the possibilities of that happening? Or would you even agree with my premise? If the big D Democrats come within, say, if the Republicans maintain a majority of, let's say, 3 seats, 2 seats, can you envision a world where you get anything accomplished, or must the Democratic Party take majority?
Well, I served with 102 Democrats to 101. So my majority when I was majority leader was only 1 vote every day. So, we ran in those days, the bills that we could and had to, but there were days that 8 to 10 Republicans would be supportive of things that we were trying to achieve. So, I'm always hopeful that if we're close and there's not this gigantic gap, the Republicans in 5 years ago had 120 seats, more than that, which really gave them a preeminent advantage to make the changes that they wanted, but it hasn't gotten any better. They stuck with the same old stale policies over the last 30 years, and you haven't seen any progress. And actually, you see significant gaps now that we're in a pandemic. You can see the failure of policies now on human services. You have a state center for the mentally challenged at Whitehaven Center closed, with elderly people who lived there their whole lives, so you've seen these policy failures. And, with a Democratic majority, obviously we can take the policy in a new direction, but I always think it's good to have willing bipartisanship when you can have it. Maybe I'm not even Pollyannish about this. I have worked with Republicans in a majority to support things that were necessary. I've also had Republicans work with Democrats when things were necessary to be done. So, we're in the toughest situation we've been in generations, not because the governor failed us, because we were in a pandemic. We have a virus that's stalking us. So, I'm hopeful that we can reconsider things, as I've discussed, take a look at re-engineering programs that need to be completely changed, and, focus on trying to help real people get a leg up, because it doesn't feel today, at least in the county I live in, that people feel like they're getting ahead. They really don't. And I'm not just talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about stale wages, big companies hollowing out our communities and not doing a single thing for them, and a brain drain that sucked out 25 to 40-year-olds and smattered our best talent all across the globe, with nobody here anymore to do things that there aren't any, a whole glut of $50,000 to $80,000, $90,000 a year jobs here. There's no tech jobs here in Luzerne County anymore. A few, but not many. So we need to re-engage ourselves, become part of the new economy that's out there, the wireless economy, the global economy that doesn't need physical. We don't have to have a Empire State Building for office buildings anymore. We can do it right here. So, I'm hopeful that we can re-engage people, invite new groups of people back in to repopulate our areas as we revitalize rural and urban communities. I think we got a shot at being something new, the new Pennsylvania, the one post-pandemic,
It's my impression, of course you can disagree, that's where the question comes from. One of the biggest reasons that the Republicans inside the Commonwealth, and I can make an argument nationwide, were desperate. They were nearly apoplectic to reopen the economy and get quote unquote get folks back to work was not just the fact that they were seeing an increase in their wages because of the additional $600 a week in pandemic benefit, but also that they had so thoroughly destroyed the unemployment compensation system and office and reduced the number of good-hearted folks who worked for it inside the Commonwealth that it so poorly functioned that they, I believe, know that eventually, I've been preaching it for months, that people were going to catch on to the fact that they so gutted the office during the Corbett administration that they want to get caught being responsible for it. Would you happen to agree with that?
Everybody got a cut except the Senate and House leaders. The appropriations for the House and Senate have gone up almost every year. They froze a little bit during the Corbett years, but they've been climbing ever since. The political class is pretty much taking care of themselves, and they're not focusing on the programs that need to be redesigned in a bipartisan way. I mean, look, people are sick of it. They're sick of the elite 1% that makes off with all the money in the tax code, but they're also sick of the political elite who doesn't listen anymore. When you go to a person's door and they say, we don't hear from the incumbent. We don't even know who she is. We've never seen her in 10 years. These are shocking things. In my time, at least, getting out there, doing town meetings, exposing people to important decisions as you're making them, engaging them to try to figure out in the reciprocity of a representative democracy. My job's to represent people. It's not to represent my own values. And there have been times that I listened in these town meetings and said, okay, I'll go back and I'll moderate my position. I'll move away from where my party is to a different position because my committee demands it. That's not happening anymore. People are sick of it. So we do have a sense of broken government. As you say, the potholes are getting bigger. They're four-season potholes. The educational system, it seems fractious. Our healthcare system, and as you said, it's not really a system. It's a bunch of...
It's an industry.
It's an industry.
It's an industry. And that's not just inside the Commonwealth, by the way. This is a nationwide problem. We're the only nation on earth that has the health issues that we have, the health industry issues that we have. No other nation on earth has this. When Senator, when it's become, sadly, I think a bit of a buzzword, but when Senator Sanders talks about, when he says this, it's the truth. We are the only nation on earth that suffers, and I use that word intentionally. We're the only nation on earth that has consciously decided, lobbied, made into law, made as a practice, that your health, that Todd Eachus' health, that my health, or severe lack thereof, by the way, is a matter of profit. If I can afford it, I get it. And if I can't, I don't.
We've seen it, though. I mean, remember back in the 90s, we talked about less competition among healthcare players. Now you see University of Pennsylvania and their platform competing in New Jersey and Princeton and over into suburban parts of Southeast. You see Geisinger from central Pennsylvania spread their platform all across the way to Stroudsburg in the east with small buildings and clinics. You see UPMC in Pittsburgh make their way all the way across the state to compete against Geisinger, right? And other systems. So
nothing's broken into the Lehigh Valley. I would just like to let you know. It's St. Luke's or Lehigh Valley Health. That's it.
Here in Hazel, and kind of grateful that they are, because our system was failing, and Lehigh Valley runs a pretty decent system. They're not like these it's not the most gigantic corporate system in the world, so they're still a little humble. So, but we have all this competition going on. We build all these buildings and all this extra infrastructure, and now you can't use the buildings with the same capacity that you could before the pandemic, right? So all this expenditure on capital expenditure seems like a significant failure, and it's going to drive the cost of our healthcare system up in Pennsylvania alone. Forget about the rest of the country. So I'm glad to hear that, President Biden will reconsider all of this, because we do have Bernie in the room, and we do have other people in the room that want to consider a seamless healthcare system in the future that can reach us all. I know it sounds like a bridge too far, but it can happen. Even in my own time, in a bipartisan way, as I mentioned earlier, we took the prescription drug program before Medicare Part D in Pennsylvania, fought the drug companies and got the lowest price in the nation for our drugs, asked pharmacists to give a little bit on their distribution and co-payments, a little bit extra from each person who used the program, like $1 or $2. And we were able to reach 300,000 more citizens by expanding our own prescription drug program. It can be done, but you have to take on the special interest groups, the doctors, the hospitals, the insurance companies, and pharma. You have to take them on. And, they don't like folks like me back at the Capitol, because I drive a hard bargain. If I go in the room with a Republican person like Representative Pat Vance, Senator Pat Vance from Camp Hill, who was a nurse, and she understands healthcare and is just as committed to try to increase the amount of Pennsylvanians on a program, and you find a progressive like me from northeastern Pennsylvania, just as committed to try to reach more people and gain more access, it can be done. We need to work together again. We need to stop this squabbling and this horrible, yelling at each other. Like I said, it's like you can't be for somebody on the corner waving in traffic. You have to be against the guy who's out there waving. I believe in this democracy. I've always believed in this country. I believe in the concept of, that we're indivisible, that we can stand for our party one day, but also stand for our country the next. This tribalism, that the President Trump has helped create, where you have to choose a side. I'm sorry, it doesn't have to work that way. The guy behind you, President Kennedy, said, "What will you do for your country? Ask not what you do for your, step up."
Ask not what your country will do for you.
Thank
Ask
you.
what you will do for your country.
I knew you'd finish that for me.
We choose to go to the moon and do the other things.
Right.
Not because they are easy,
Right.
but because they are hard. We used to be the country that did the hard things. Specifically because they were hard. And because we were the country that did the hard things. And we exported that to the rest of the world. We rebuilt continents. We rebuilt entire continents after World War II. The last thing that we exported, the last major, huge, enormous thing that we exported, our entire industrial base to China. That's the last thing we exported. And it's folks like us, like me, who's living right on the edge of doom, health doom and economic doom, that have suffered ever since. I don't sit here each week and try to preach doom and gloom to you folks at home because that's all there is. I preach it because it's the truth. It's a truth that you're not being told. It's not pretty. It's not sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. It is the truth. When my friends, family, fellow Democrats, and friends who are Republicans, yes, I do have those, go out searching for jobs or who have jobs and hope and do job searching hoping for better and come back to me and say, I applied for a job. I think it's going to be awesome. Can you believe they're paying $15 an hour? Folks, I interviewed for a job 2 weeks ago. I made more money 20 years ago. They looked me dead in the face and say, we're one of the better paying companies in the Valley. We're paying 15. Do you know what a $15 an hour gross income for a year puts you? That little much, and I know if you're in Hot 101, you're not seeing me right now. It puts you a hair's breadth above the federal poverty wage. And they were proud that they paid 15. Proud. And I'm not naming the company because the folks I interviewed with were wonderful, wonderful people.
Hey, Jeff.
Good people.
Who sets the wage scale for our region anyway? It's like a rigged game. You know, if you look
Correct.
Correct.
Because I've had people that I've interviewed with, Todd, that's a really interesting question. Could probably do a program on that. And in fact, I've actually reached out to Lehigh University to try to get, there's a professor who does small 2-3 minute bits on the local PBS, or I shouldn't say PBS, that's not NPR. I always say PBS and NPR. PBS is on TV, NPR is on radio, and I do that all the time. About he does these little economic bits, and I damn near puke every time I listen to them because he tells us how wonderful everything is, and as an economics professor, it is shocking to hear some of what he portrays as fact that is quite fundamentally incorrect. But who sets a sail? That's an excellent question, because when I do go on some of these interviews and I have folks look at me and say, well, this isn't New York. You're correct. Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown, Quakertown, the Slate Belt, East Stroudsburg proper. You're right. They're what we generally consider to be the greater Lehigh Valley. You're right. It's not. It's not New York. It's not Philadelphia.
But it's a rigged game.
Except that it's 70 miles from New York or 50 miles from Philadelphia. I'm not in Des Moines.
Right. And if you go from, just use a nurse as an example, a nurse in Danville, Pennsylvania makes $5 more an hour than a nurse in Wilkes-Barre.
And there's a reason, Todd, there's a reason it's called the federal poverty wage. It is a nationwide standard. By the way, a home here in the Lehigh Valley, let's just say for the sake of argument, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house may not cost what it does in Northeast New Jersey or in Morris County, where I came from. And I came home to the Lehigh Valley because I was priced out of Northeast New Jersey, Morris County. So that scale may not be the same. However, a copay is the same there as it is here. A gallon of milk is the same there as it is here. A car is the same here as it is there. And by the way, gas is a hell of a lot more expensive here as it is there.
Right.
So when we talk about this regional cost of living, the differences are negligible.
Right.
What are we really talking about when we talk about this regional cost of living? If I go to a general practitioner in Morris Plains, New Jersey, where my old practitioner was, the $40 copay I pay him is the same damn one I pay here. It's still $40. A $3 gallon of milk in Morris Plains is a $3 gallon of milk here. the $2.50 gallon of gas. And by the way, I've been living here now for closer to 5 years than 4, when that gallon of regular was $3.25 on occasion, when it was only $2.25 in Jersey.
And they would pump it for you.
And they'll pump it for you. Was these things balance out. Now I understand, and it's a fair point to make, an extremely fair and accurate point to make. 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Morristown could be $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 when it's $200,000 or $300,000 here. I get it, and it's a fair point, and there's no argument to be made against it. Everything else is the same. The loaf of bread at Costco costs the same as the Costco there. Jeans at the Gap cost the same here as they do out there. What are we talking about? That's why it's a federal poverty wage. So when you get a company that says warehouse manager, North Bergen, New Jersey, $80,000, here, $35,000. 70 miles does not equal a $50,000 difference.
Damn straight, man. And I'm serious about this.
What the hell are we talking about here, folks?
We need to reconsider this. These issues of wages and wage base when we get to the state capital. Well, obviously, as you say, some that get set by federal regs, they're wrong. I mean, this is for a nurse to make $5 less from Wilkes-Barre to Danville, or from Wilkes-Barre to Allentown, or from Allentown to.
And by the way, Todd, you mentioned, and I understand why you said it, and you did not say it you said it in a statistical context, not in a derogatory context. Third-class cities. Allentown's the 3rd largest municipality in the Commonwealth, and yet is neglected, left behind, ignored, treated like it's some village somewhere, like it's some one stoplight or no stoplight village somewhere. It's the 3rd largest city in the Commonwealth. The schools are underfunded nearly $80 million. When the pandemic hit and the schools needed to be closed, not only did we not have laptops or tablets to send them home with, kids were in classes sharing books that were 20 and 30 years old. 3rd class. Blimey, no class.
Yeah, right. And I'll go back to the exact same question you said you started the program off with. Why did you do this? And again, part of my answer to my wife was everything seems to be in trouble. And we need to send serious people back to the state capitol who are going to sit down, roll up their sleeves, I don't really care about winning or losing an election. I've already won elections and lost elections. I'm going back to make serious decisions that need to be made for the Commonwealth, see if we can put this thing back together again, whether it's wages, whether it's revenue, whether it's reconsidering how we treat people in social services, because look at our social service network. It's been gutted, completely gutted. Counties have less to provide more services to more people that are struggling with mental health trouble, those who are mentally challenged, those who are physically disabled. These populations, they're working on a nickel where they used to work on a quarter. What's happening is we got to reconsider all of it. This is a post-pandemic discussion, not a pre-pandemic discussion.
And what better time? And nobody wanted this pandemic. No one wanted it. Nobody asked for it. Nobody wanted it. And as much as I disagree with the current occupant of the White House, and damn it, I disagree with him on damn near everything. He did not create this pandemic. He didn't ask for it. He didn't want it. He didn't create it. He wasn't in a lab at night in the basement of the White House stirring up and creating this pandemic. He didn't create it. That said, this pandemic, because I think you've hit on something exceptionally important. This pandemic does give us a chance to hit the reset button on several different things throughout our society: government, interpersonal relationships, the way we conduct business, commuting, homes. I'm talking a whole different about
the amount of people in a physical space. People,
it gives us
our economy, right?
Yeah, education. It gives us a chance to hit the reset button on a lot of different things that do not work properly in our society. From, again, if the one thing that it is only one thing. If this pandemic has not proved how vital and yet how poor broadband works in this Commonwealth, I don't know what it has shown.
Right.
If it has not shown how fragile and how complete from A to Z that our health industry is completely for profit, and how little of it is about care, I don't know what it has shown us.
No.
If this pandemic has not shown us the mass inequities in education throughout this nation and Commonwealth, from municipality to municipality to municipality, I don't know what has shown it, what will show it. This pandemic has laid so much. Franz is going to make fun of me because I probably used laid in the wrong context. It has lain so many things bare. I mean, the room, the expanse, the space, the opportunity for self-examination in this nation is right in front of us. If we do not do it now, I do not when we may ever do it.
Hey, look, sometimes you just got to crumple up the paper.
Exactly.
Start over, right?
And start with a fresh piece.
Right?
Yeah.
A sheet of paper, get rid of the old programs that we've had, and let's reconsider it all. Let's sit down like grown-ups. Let's send serious people. We're going to face serious problems for the state capitol this time around. Don't just vote the incumbent who you've been voting for. Take a close look at who's been serious. Take a close look at who's going to tell you the truth about what they're going to do. Because it's, in the former world, it would be risky to say, I'm going to raise the severance tax. But I'm going to raise the severance tax. I'm not going to tax regular citizens when I have an industry taking a commodity out of our zone, selling on the open market, and
right out from under your feet.
Zero. So again, we have to reconsider all of it, crumple up the paper, toss it, get another draft, and restart, because this is just a restart moment. If you look at it, and I'll finish with this because we're about at 7:04, and we started 2 hours ago. So what I'm saying to you is that, we started out in a situation where we weren't expecting this. And as I said, no one's to blame, but it shows very clearly the gaps and the failures of government programs. And we've explained a whole bunch of them, from healthcare to roads to education to whatever. All of them need to be reconsidered. The way we've been doing things then need to change. After the Black Plague, you had the Enlightenment. After we had polio and smallpox, we came out of the Great Depression, and we had a progressive movement where Social Security was created all the way through Medicare.
The New Deal.
Moments where we're going to get an opportunity to reconsider the 35 years of Republican programs that are now in frame working, and we can see where the gaps are. They're not working now. Crumple it up, throw away the draft, and let's get restarted in 2021. That's why I'm going back, and that's why I'm going to be successful, because we need serious people to go back who understand how to compromise and sit in a room and not call each other names, and not just play political ping pong with each other. Look, I elect the governor to be the governor. I'm not going to stand by all the decisions this governor's made. I think he's squandered some of his political capital in the way he handles things. That's up to him. I'm not going to stand for a party or stand for a governor. I'm going there to reconsider serious problems in this economy and in this society, including social justice, which we didn't really touch on in this show. But I'm going back to really try and take on these issues and create a different sense of fairness, because it ain't working. Where I live in southern Luzerne County and across the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, it's not working. So let's reconsider it. I really appreciate the time today, Jeff.
But I get the sense that you're leaving us. Tell us how you can be reached, how the campaign can be reached. Any thoughts that we may have missed that we didn't get to that you really wanted to get to? Just open floor. Anything that we didn't get to, contact info, websites, everything. Just floor is yours.
So you can go to toddeachus.com. That's my campaign website, and that gives you a basic framework of what we stand for. You can donate there. If anybody is inspired to give me a donation, we have an ActBlue account. You can provide a credit card. You can contribute today. Also, I have an email. It's Eachus, EACHUS, just like on the screen there. Todd, TODD, @gmail.com. Email me if you've got questions or concerns from the program. Please let me know. Also on the website, we have an info address. If you hit that up, we'll get back to you. Also, we have a Facebook page, Todd Eachus for state representative. You can message me on join us on our Facebook page, and also I respond actively to messages every day, either email or on Messenger. So reach out to me, let me know what you think. As far as the other issues that I'm concerned about, I think we covered a lot of them. I'm also concerned about, the rate of opioid addiction. We're still seeing an uptick in this, and we have Chinese fentanyl.
Especially since the pandemic, by the way, you've seen a real uptick in it as people are at home, depressed, don't know what to do with themselves, out of work. There has been an uptick in it. You are correct.
Attorney General Josh Shapiro did a report showing that 40% of the opioids now that people are overdosing on are being written by doctors on prescriptions. So once again, we have to be vigilant within our medical community to make sure that we're being tight about how we're writing these, but we also have to fight our enemies. We always know that we got a lot of our heroin from the Golden Triangle in Afghanistan. We also get a lot of this new fentanyl from China, and we need to do interdiction and work with law enforcement and drug enforcement agency. Hazleton was named this week as the main transshipment area for the entire region of Chinese fentanyl and opioids. These things matter to me. So, whether it's fighting illegal drugs in our street and making common sense policies for drugs that have been in prohibition, I'm for that. If it's about redesigning public education funding, I want to think hard on that. Think about how we're going to do roads and reconsider all the manpower that we're using across these local entities, county entities, and states.
And we didn't get to mention that the Commonwealth spends more money, more total dollars, a bigger percentage of its budget on prisons than education.
Right. So we have to look at how we deal with these issues. How we look at who's going into jail. Are we going to continue to arrest people for small amounts of marijuana out here beyond the boundary of Philadelphia? They've decriminalized. I think the city of Allentown decriminalized, right?
I had almost the entire township council and the police superintendent of Upper Darby Township on almost 4 weeks ago, talking about their decriminalization efforts there, and it was a really remarkable program. I was
just can't
really proud that they were on. Yeah,
you're right about that. So we're using rational decision making about violent and non-violent criminals. So it's a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of things we need to unpack in 2021 to create a new progressive movement coming out of this pandemic, reconsidering the failure of 30 years of Republican policies that just haven't worked, reconsider Democratic policies that haven't been implemented but should be, and looking forward to a new governor in 2022. We will have a new governor, new leadership in 2022. So while we have Governor Wolf winding his 8 years down, we're going to be reconsidering new leadership in 2022. So I want to be part of that.
I want to ask you about, because I believe I'm going to see you, sir, on Thursday.
Yeah.
Tell me about the event I'm going to see you at on Thursday.
So it's I'm with a group of rural Democrats fighting for the rural Bill of Rights, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. It's creating farm economy, creating tax credits for farmers to be able to intergenerationally transfer land between a grandfather and a grandson who wants to maintain the heritage of farming. It's doing set-asides for conservation districts and green zones so we maintain the suburban rural nature of our farm communities, and also broadband, as I mentioned earlier. I negotiated Act 30 in 2006-7 with Verizon and the major carriers, and there was a map with Pennsylvania where they were supposed to deploy broadband to eliminate these gaps. They didn't keep their promise. So I'll be discussing the broadband issue at that press conference, but it's also pulling together people who, once again, want to see an urban-rural coalition, a new coalition made between our rural communities that provide high-quality food products and high-quality jobs on farms, and also be able to help our cities with nutrition and better chain of supply for fresh foods that come into our towns, and also engaging our rural community and what they need as far as rural healthcare issues and gaps in places that are very remote and far from major hospital systems. How do we do these things? So there's a group of us there on the stairs of the city, on the stairs of the Capitol on Thursday. It'll really be the first time I've been back to the state capitol in 10 years. I haven't given any policy speeches or been with another group. I'm excited about this opportunity because it's about that new rural urban coalition that we're trying to create and revitalizing rural communities at the same time we're reconsidering urban policies as well.
Well, I'm going to see you there. At least that's the plan.
Right on.
We never know. Hopefully I won't get a flat tire or anything like that. And God knows what my health will be like. But that's the plan, as I will see you there Thursday. And I think the interesting thing about the Rural Bill of Rights is that, FDR gave his very important Four Freedoms speech in what he had planned and was going to work on in his fourth term. Because remember, we had a Democratic Socialist president in this country, and his name was Franklin Roosevelt, and he was elected 4 times. He was so popular. And he knew with all of the troops that would be coming home and that the economy was going to have to transition again from a war economy back to a peacetime economy, and that he was expecting a bit of a dip, and that these New Deal policies were going to have to be reinstituted. And one of the very important quotes from that speech was that how can a man be truly free? Of course, a man, because it was the 40s still, so, a little behind the times. But how can a man be truly free if he is not free from want? Meaning, if you wake up in the morning and you are constantly worried about money, how are you truly free? And one of the things, among the things that Franklin Roosevelt felt that a man, again, and it's the 40s, okay, give him, what I'm talking about here, that one full-time job should be able to sustain a family of 4 with a car, a home, the ability to put some money away, to pay for a higher education, not just a public education, but a higher education, and even provide that family with 2 weeks of recreation each and every year. And I think one of the beauties of this Rural Bill of Rights, and every time I am have the honor of speaking with Michelle Siegel, is that this is what this is born out of. While this is a new presentation of, and I don't want to say a new packaging, but while this is a presentation of this is not an entirely new idea, although this is a brand new presentation of it. These are essential rights and freedoms. These are economic freedoms. These are FDR's 4 freedoms, his economic Bill of Rights. These are Roosevelt wanted the economic Bill of Rights enshrined in the Constitution. Not giveaways, but rights. It is your right to not constantly, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, be afraid of your own economic existence. Isn't that the ultimate freedom?
The only thing to fear is fear itself, right? And the President Trump, has created so much fear in the country, whether it's racial fear or economic fear or resentment or whatever. We need to get off of this. We need to get on with not being afraid anymore, sending people that are serious to the Capitol in Washington and to Harrisburg and other state capitals to be able to reconsider what the next progressive movement's going to be. Because after the pandemic and after every major crisis in America, you've seen major problems, Great Depression, and then a progressive movement. You saw in the roaring 20s after the Spanish flu in the 1913. You had the roaring 20s after that. We're about to have a roaring 2020 to 2050, but we have to reconsider what we're doing. We have to reconsider the policies. We have to stop resenting each other and not be afraid.
Tom Hartman talks about these 80-year cycles of boom, bust, war, then a progressive revolution, boom, bust, war, a progressive revolution that fixes everything,
right?
A sustained boom, the moneyed interests take over again, a sustained economic sense of calm,
right,
until the moneyed interests chip away at it again, then a bust because those policies don't work, then a war.
Well, we've already had the war,
and you can trace it from the revolution.
Yeah.
About 80 years into the Civil War, about another 80 years into World War I, obviously much less into World War II. And you can trace it all the way through. And we're into that 80-year cycle. We're at about the end of that 80-year cycle.
So when guys like me swear in at the state capitol on our Bible or whatever your scripture is, we take a serious oath to try to remake a new Pennsylvania that catches up with the rest of the world and not let us fall behind. You know, this is one of those moments where, you know, I went the first time for different reasons. It was exciting to try to get to the state capitol. There's very little I'm excited about except major trouble. I know all the pitfalls you could possibly have at the state capitol. I'm not going to fall in the same pattern. We all need to do better. And so as I leave you, Jeff, I'm really grateful for this time, but I'm also grateful to people, the 116th, the people that I've visited with or listening tonight, or may listen on the rebroadcast. I'm incredibly thrilled about what you've told me, because you're our greatest natural resource. And I'm not just saying you're going to work cheap either. You're our greatest natural resource because they haven't given up on their neighbors. They haven't given up on their ability to be positive. There's still people who are struggling right now who know there'll be a better day tomorrow. So send people like me to the state capitol with a positive mental attitude to tell you exactly what they're going to do before they get there, and stop avoiding tough questions. Stop hiding, because these incumbents, both parties, a lot of them are hiding, silent on major issues. So, hey, the great thing about this show is I've been able to speak about some of the most serious issues facing the Commonwealth, and I think in a lot of other states that may be listeners, same pattern of stuff's going on in the other states you guys are living in. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here, talk directly to a global citizenry. Your audience is global, and it's exciting to me. So glad to come back another time and talk about things as we go, but really grateful today for the opportunity to talk about what it means to be somebody who cares deeply about public service and does service for the reason you go to serve. You don't go there for your own selfish or slavish reasons. So very excited about 2021 and the new progressive movement we're going to create with the new majority when we get there.
Well, it's been extremely kind of you to give me so much time. I hope it went quick. I told you when we talked on the phone before the program that I knew it would go fast. I hope you felt that it went quickly. I mean, we've been here for 2.5 hours. I hope it didn't feel like 2.5 hours.
No,
I hope you enjoyed yourself. And you've been very kind and very, very open. I'm appreciative of your time. I'm appreciative of your friendship. And I will see you Thursday. I'm very excited about that. I hope we can grab a coffee or lunch or something after the rally. If you're not rushing straight out of there, hopefully we can we can grab a couple minutes on Thursday. And I'm glad that you're coming on Thursday also, by the way. And I will we'll look to see you on Thursday. And on behalf of my audience and behalf of the program, the staff, so much as it is, myself, April, and George, such as it, and my cat that keeps wandering in and out of the studio, I appreciate the fact that you were willing to come here and talk to myself, talk to the audience. And as with every single guest on the program, the door is never, never, never closed to you. You are always welcome here. You always have an open door here. Here and our Revolution, Pennsylvania, the door is always open to you. You are always welcome here. You have the keys to the castle, so to speak. Well, not the castle, the humble shack, as it were. You have the keys. You know how to get in, and don't let this be the only time you ever come visit us on the Kennedy Effect. You're always welcome here.
Thank you. Really, really a pleasure being with you.
Thanks so much, Todd. We'll see you Thursday.
Take care.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
That is Todd Eachus, Democratic nominee and candidate for the 116th district in the Pennsylvania State House. And for Todd to return to the Pennsylvania State House as he's been there. And that's a really interesting thing. You're talking about a gentleman who's been there, has the T-shirt, he's done it, and yet sees what's wrong and feels the need, the deep need, that feels it here, feels it in the gut, to get back and fix what he sees to be wrong. And I think that's a really interesting thing. It's Teddy Roosevelt that said a great democracy has got to be progressive, or it will soon cease to be great or a democracy. Now, whether you agree with progressivism or not, I don't consider progressivism to be new. I do not think it fell from the sky. I don't think it came from Mars. I don't think it is a new philosophy. I think it is simply returning this nation, our Commonwealth, your municipalities, wherever you may be listening, to a set of principles and policies that have been followed and instituted previously in our nation. And we can do these things. And maybe this is a good time for me to mention, perhaps this is a good time for me to mention, as I have mentioned before, but perhaps not to this extent, I have friends in the party opposite. I do. I have Republican friends. They're good people. I disagree with them vigorously. In fact, they have yet to, you may remember when my dear friend, my good friend, Robert Smith was on the program, and throughout the near 3 hours that he was kind enough to share that time with us, really did not give us an economic reason for his membership in the party. Taxes, yes, but then didn't really give much of a comeback to the fact that if you're in the economic 99%, you actually pay more money in taxes than you did prior to Reagan. The United States, given the fact that it is a two-party system and is set up nearly not nearly, is set up exclusively as a two-party system. Well, maybe nearly, because Maine has actually instituted a ranked choice voting, and that will be interesting to see how that plays out, especially in its Senate race coming up this fall. We need a functioning Republican Party. I'm trying to find a picture that I have of Roosevelt's Four Freedoms so I can read them to you. We need a functioning Republican Party again in this country. Time was in the past of this country where the Republican Party and the Democratic Party agreed where the nation should go. They agreed on the outcomes. They disagreed on how to get there. And that is where the debate and the compromises came. We need to get back to that. I want a functioning Republican Party. I don't want, and this country does not need, a wholly owned subsidiary of the largest corporations and the richest 1%. It does not need a party buried in conspiracy, falsehoods. If you only hate the person behind you on food stamps, it's the billionaire that's really your friend. It isn't. That's where we disagree. We need a functioning Republican Party in this country again. And to think it can happen, because as a party de-evolves, presupposes the fact that it once was evolved. So it can happen. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find the picture now. It's sad. I really need to rearrange my pictures. Something I said I was going to do while I was off of work, and I've done none of it. I need to make folders for these darn things. I had a nice, lovely, and there's the Economic Bill of Rights. I'll read that for you. But the party has de-evolved into a party of conspiracy theory and social issues and falsehoods, sadly. And I know that my Republican friends who are listening are probably screaming that I'm the one full of it. And okay, I understand why they feel that way. It's not the case, but that's okay. I understand why they feel that way. But the truth of the matter is that we need a functioning Republican Party. When you have a two-party system, it really, really helps if both of them function. And as I have said on this program many, 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 many times before, and here's where I anger the folks in my party. My party is not perfect. It is far from perfect. But it is the only one making an effort. It is the only one making an effort. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, area code 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. The phone line, the single solitary phone line is open. We will try to take you to 8 p.m., assuming if we have phone calls and so on, you get to listen to me ramble for at least another half hour. Depending on if there are phone calls that come on in, we will carry you through as long as the organicness happens. I did find we are at 7:30 Eastern Time, bottom of our third hour Eastern Time. So let's do some business, shall we? Wherever you are watching on Facebook, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. You are all, every single one of you, and I mean this sincerely. No matter how much we may agree or disagree, the fact that you are taking part in the program is appreciated, period. Our home group page is that other side of information. Wherever you may be watching, whether it is Our Revolution Signal Boost, Pennsylvania Democratic Politics, I Thrive Community, Lehigh Valley Stands Up, Easton Democratic Party. I'm trying to think of all the groups. I can't think of all the groups because I shared like 40 of them, and I will miss some of you, and I apologize. But of course, the Facebook page for hot101.net. But wherever it is that you are watching, we thank you, and we do truly appreciate it. Again, this program is a dream of mine. I have been in radio and television since I was 16, and I am just a hair older than that now, and I enjoy it a great deal. I do genuinely enjoy doing this program. So I thank you for watching. I thank you for listening. If you are listening live, thank you very much. If you are listening, watching the recorded program, which of course you can find wherever the program is shared, and our home group page, That Other Side of Information, thank you. Appreciate it a great deal. It is the home page, however, That Other Side of Information, where I will see that you are watching. I will see your name pop up. I will say hello. You can enter a comment or question there. That would be lovely. I will see it. I will read it. We can talk about it. Our friends, our family, our hot101.net family, thank you as always for welcoming me onto your devices, the car stereo, your smart speaker, wherever it is, however you consume hot101.net. Thank you again for welcoming us into your lives for a few hours on a Sunday evening. We are thrilled to be here and thrilled to be part of it, and thrilled to be part of the family. My thanks to April Riddick, DJ Lexus, and DJ Earl for bringing us into hot101.net and being part of the family. We hope you enjoy the program. We hope you take something away from it every single week. If you do not know how to listen to hot101.net, you can go to the main website page, hot101.net. You can get the apps at the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store for Android, or the TuneIn Radio app. And if you want to advertise on the Kennedy Effect, just drop us an email, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. There are some folks in the Facebook room. If you have a comment or a question, you can enter it there, or the phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. It's also on the screen. Just a friendly reminder. This is really interesting, and this continues to happen. I find it gratifying and yet amusing, which I'm sure the person that does it is going to think I'm making fun. God is my witness, I'm not. I'm just saying I find it really interesting because it continues to happen every single week. If you're watching the program recorded, the show phone number is not open. If you are listening to us live right now at 7:34 Eastern Time on a Sunday, September 13th, call. You can call right this moment. If you're watching this recorded, this would not be the best time. But I continue to get phone calls on the show phone number throughout the week. Some of them are at all hours of the day and night, which just means that folks are watching on the recording, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, I'm genuinely grateful because it means somebody's watching, and I think that's wonderful. It means we're still getting there. We're getting to you all out there. You're watching, you're taking part in the program, you're listening, you're engaged, and I'm thrilled by that. But it's really only when we're here live that I can take your phone calls. So please keep that in mind. Listen to the program recorded anytime you wish. I mean it. I mean it with all my heart. I'm thrilled. Do it anytime you wish. But it's only when we're actually physically here live that I can take your phone call. And I happen to be here live right now. It is 7:35. Yes, 7:35 Eastern time, Eastern Seaboard of the United States. We can take your phone call right now. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. Or I suppose, it might be possible that Google has sold the phone number to a marketing company or something. They could be the ones that are calling me all hours of the day and night. So I wanted to read this for you as I just punched my microphone. That's very professional, isn't it? I pulled it right out of the socket the other week, as you remember. Let me read something for you. I mentioned to Todd that I will be live, by the way. If you want to meet me, I will be in Harrisburg. I will be at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania State Capitol on Thursday, September the 17th. Oh, God, is that right? Yes, that is the 17th. He checked his calendar. I will be there live. That is the plan. Barring anything unforeseen, I will be live, in person, in the flesh, Thursday, September the 17th, at the Capitol of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a rally and event highlighting the rural. There's no way to say that word and make it sound clear. The word is just constructed that way. To expand on, explain, speak about, and rally for the Rural Bill of Rights. A truly wonderful idea, an idea whose time has come, an expansion upon, a build upon, a reintroduction to Franklin Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights, something I want to read to you right now. The Economic Bill of Rights was put together by President Roosevelt, and originally proposed in January of 1944. As I mentioned with Todd Eachus, President Roosevelt knew that following the conclusion of World War II, the United States was probably looking at a dip in economic activity and a dip in economic performance. I don't think we were going to see a complete return to Depression conditions, but we were going to be looking at an economic downturn as millions of soldiers came home. They would need work. As the folks who were running and working in the war economy returned home, they exited the workforce, and it took more workers to run a war economy than a peacetime economy. So those folks were going to, there were just going to be, generally speaking, less jobs. And Roosevelt was looking at a return to reinstitution of New Deal economics. Again, government continuing to spend, to keep people employed, to put money in the hands of the people who would spend it, and to keep the economy driving forward. And these policies continued to be used and to be put into place after President Roosevelt passed by Truman, but not to the same extent, sadly. But they were continued. There was an expansion. There were expansions of Social Security. The union movement continued. You had President Eisenhower pass and put into law the Interstate Highway Act, which employed millions of workers. and by the way, returned anywhere from 7-1 to 12-1. I know that's a very wide spread, but you had these investments give massive return back in tax revenue. So they paid for themselves in droves. They paid for themselves many, many, many times over. But one of the things that President Roosevelt wanted to do was literally add to the Constitution an economic Bill of Rights. We had our initial Bill of Rights that we all know about, freedom of speech, and God knows we can, we've drooled. We have a significant part of our population that goes on and sleeps at night with the Second Amendment. But all of our first 10 amendments, the initial Bill of Rights. Well, Roosevelt wanted a second Bill of Rights. This was his economic Bill of Rights. And this spoke to what he thought were the four freedoms, but all centered back on the freedom from want. This ideal that a person could not be truly free if he or she, or if a family was constantly and consistently worried about its own economic survival, and that you cannot be truly free if you are not free from want. And that is what this economic Bill of Rights was meant to address. This was meant to be, in my estimation, in the estimation of many, really, but to me, this was to be a codification, a permanency of the middle class. It was to say that the middle class deserved these things. It was a codification. It was a constitutional codification of economic fairness, is how I would characterize it. There are maybe other historians who would say differently, but in my opinion, this is how I would characterize it. I don't consider myself a historian. By the way, I don't have, you'll notice behind me, if you are watching, there are no fancy degrees behind me. But let me get to reading this anyway. So this is President Franklin Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights. It was first and originally proposed January 11th, 1944. Every American is entitled to the following: the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of the nation. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return, which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home and abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. And finally, the right to a good education. Now, it would seem to me that these are principles that the party opposite has told the nation, and that right-wingers around the globe, for that matter, have told us that they believe in, and yet they have squashed all of these principles from the beginning. And I think this is one of the brilliant things about not only this economic Bill of Rights, but the rural Bill of Rights. If Republicans believe in it so much, they should be out on those steps on Thursday signing it and supporting it. But yet, I suspect it will snow first on Thursday before any of them do. And if they do, I will come back here next week and tell you I was wrong. And I want to be wrong. I hope every single Republican in the legislature comes out and signs it. I hope they do. I want to be wrong. I just don't think I will be. I do not suspect that I will be. Now, what I read you was not the rural Bill of Rights that I will be attending the rally for on Thursday. I do not expect that I will be speaking. That will be left for the officials and the candidates. I talk enough on Sunday nights, but I will be there. If you happen to recognize me or notice me or want to say hello, please do so. But I will be there in support of it, and I will be there in support of the candidates who support it, the candidates who created it, the candidates who believe in it. I will be there, and I hope, and I mean this, I mean it sincerely, I hope that every single Republican in the legislature comes out and supports it and signs it. Because if they truly believe in what's in it, as they tell everyone that they do, then they will come out and support it. But I'm not holding my breath. But it will be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see. I am not holding my breath. 7:47 Eastern Time. We'll go to 8 o'clock. Phone line is open. He said the phone line is open. 7:47 Eastern Time. 267 227 9189. 267 227 9189. What I believe I'm going to do, I should have looked for another picture actually, to better illustrate what I was getting to. But the rural Bill of Rights is a stroke of genius, I must say, because what is inside of it is basic. It is common sense. It is universal. Who would be against education? Who stands against healthcare? Who stands against better infrastructure? Who stands against the freedom from want? I find it continually interesting, and sadly, this has become buzzword-y as well. We don't want to hand out, we want to hand up. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have boots. Well, the thing about buzzwords is they become buzzwords for a reason. Most of the time because they are used a lot, and most of the time because they have truth to them. Among said truth is, I don't believe most people want a handout. They simply want fairness. And I believe that they know that the system is not fair. And every time I talk about fairness, I hear my late father in my head that life isn't fair. No, it's not. It's not. But when you know that the system has been bought off that's not fair either. Simple everyday fairness or unfairness is something that I think most people can deal with. But when you know that someone with hundreds, if not thousands, more times more money than yourself has used that money to artificially rig unfairness into the system, well, then we know something's foul. And that's the kind of unfairness that we're talking about. That's the kind of unfairness that needs to end. That's when we're talking about a hand up, not a hand out. That's when we're talking about restoring fairness into the system. That's the economic four freedoms. There's nothing in the four freedoms, there's nothing in the Economic Bill of Rights that talks about handing money away to people. It simply talks about, look, the right to a job. You make the money, but you have a right to the job. The right to earn enough. Not to be handed enough, not free money, but to earn enough. The right for every farmer to sell his products at a fair return. To get a fair price for his own goods. You still have to, it's your farm. It's your farm. You've still got to put the work in, but you should get a fair price for that work. The right for small businesses not to be artificially and unfairly crushed by larger companies. What's wrong with that? Not for large companies to be put out of business in favor of small businesses, but for small businesses not to be crushed by the large ones buying and rigging the system. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? And those large companies, not just here in the States, but from foreign soil. That's what tariffs used to be for. Before St. Reagan unilaterally dismantled the system and made it profitable for the entire industrial base to be sent to China. It seems to me if the party opposite was so damn worried about the small businesses in the Commonwealth, they would make it so that more than 9% of them paid the small business tax. And that the largest corporations who get away paying nothing would actually pay something. That's called equality. But then we know who owns the system. The right of every family to have a decent home. I've talked on this program for, I don't even know how many programs now, that we have incentivized renting. Nothing drives an economy like home ownership. Home ownership puts many, many, many more dollars into an economy than renting. Yes, tradespeople get jobs and earn good paychecks building buildings full of rental units. But nothing provides continual stimuli to an economy like home ownership. We've decentivized home ownership, or decentivized home ownership. Franz will correct me. As we've made it nearly impossible. Yes, interest rates are low, but home prices are artificially inflated. And in my area, rents are more than mortgages. We've made savings impossible. And you still need a down payment to buy. We've taken home ownership away. People then rent. The rents are so high, then you really can't save, and you are stuck in a cycle of renting. More people live with their parents longer and deeper into their lives than ever in the history of the country. We've choked off our own economy, and it's been deliberate. It's not by accident. It's deliberate. The right to adequate medical care. Even Roosevelt talked about medical care. The first chatter, the first whispers, the first plans of single-payer healthcare go back to Teddy Roosevelt. Truman wanted single-payer. But the very first discussions of it go back to Teddy Roosevelt. Think about this, the right to adequate protection from economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. The right. Franklin Roosevelt felt it was your right. You had a right that if you got sick, had an accident, whether it was work or a car accident or whatever it might be, or if you were unemployed, that you had a right, a fundamental right, that you would not fear what would happen to you. We have nothing of the sort in this country currently. If that happens to you now, you are chum in the water. There are many legitimate things in our economy where you are a profit center. You are a consumer. When you walk into a store to buy a good, a service, you're a profit center. You are someone with income that you are spending on that good service or product. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is how an economy functions. There are certain things in an economy where you are not, should not be a profit center. One of which is education, the right to a good education in the Economic Bill of Rights. And one is when you get sick. Many of us, many of you listening, thank goodness, have never been faced with going to a medical institution and saying, an ER, general practitioner, specialist, et cetera, doctor, this is happening to me. And that doctor, that nurse, that receptionist saying, sorry, you can't afford it. We can't help you. This is exactly what Roosevelt was talking about. I hope that everyone in the audience has never had to face such a thing. I hope you never have to face such a thing. But this is what Roosevelt was talking about. That if something bad happened, that you would not have to live with the fear of, I can't get it taken care of because I can't afford it. This is not what a civilized nation, a first world nation, a nation that used to be the richest on earth. I know people still throw that around, that we're the richest on earth. And I think there are still some statistics that say we are. Some will say China, and China, if not is currently, will be soon. And just said, well, you can't afford it, so you don't get it. Look, some things, if you can't afford them, you don't get them. I desperately would like a brand new Jeep Wrangler. In fact, they've come out with a plug-in electric hybrid. I desperately want one. Can't afford it, so I don't get it. But it's also not life-sustaining. Education and medical care should not be two of those things that if you cannot afford it, you don't get it. It's just fundamentally anathema to what this country's about, to me. And it should be to all of us. It seems to me we're so much better than that. And I hate to leave you all for this program on such a downer. But these are the things that we should be thinking about as we as we sprint ever closer to Election Day. This has also become cliche too. We are told every election day that this is the most important election of our lifetimes. Well, folks, if this one isn't, I don't know which one is. It is genuinely. I'm 51. I have been able to vote since I was 18. The first election that I could vote for was, I would have to think, I can't do the math in my head. Would it have been 80? No. I would have to think. I was 84. I think it was 84. No, it wasn't, because I graduated in 87. So it was 88. It was 88. 88. Presidential election, 88. 88. I'm glad I figured that out. I did that live on the air. You got to listen to the wheels of my brain turn. I cannot think of a single election since that has been more fundamentally important than this one. And as a student of history, not a professor of history, not an history expert by any means, I would say that the presidential elections that rival this one in importance would probably be 1932 and 1864. And the very first. So I end the program the way I do so many times, with two reminders. Please, a federal judge recently ordered the Trump regime that they may not cease data collection for the census. So I beg you, please, if you have not done so already, please fill out the census. I have done it on this program many times before. I'm begging you yet again. If you have not filled out the census, do so. I'm begging you. That said, vote. I know I have friends on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, I have a certain way that I will be voting. I wish you would join me. But even if you don't, vote. It is your voice. It is, in my belief, your right. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. Don't stay silent. There's too much at stake. It is your right. Go vote. And those are the last two things that I will leave you with. We're just a hair past 8 p.m. on the East Coast. We got a tiny bit of a late start for some technical issues. Again, no phone calls. I admonish all of you a great deal, but we love you anyway. So anyway, thank you all for being here. We will return next week. My scheduled guest is is another candidate. Our goal is to have candidates up to Election Day. We have the plan is to have all candidates up to Election Day. The first show after Election Day will be an election recap, and then it will get interesting as we scramble to have guests after that. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for putting up with the slight delay in the beginning of the program for our technical gremlins. Wherever you have listened on Facebook, thank you very, very much for being here, and we appreciate it a great, great deal. Please visit our home group page if you are not already a member. Ask, and we will get your membership squared away. That other side of information, you can also find us at the homepage of our family radio station, hot101.net. For our friends and family listening on the audio version at hot101.net, we will be back again same time next week. If you don't already have hot101.net in the apps, just go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Get that app. It is it's very simple, very easy to use. Or, of course, you can use the TuneIn Radio app, and you can listen through there. If you would like to advertise on the program, it's right there. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it very much. We will see you again next week for the Kennedy Effect. Until then, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Be nice, talk, don't scream. Have a conversation. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next week.